Good day, Uptown Accounting Group, back at you with another video. Today we're going to dive into Visa, who just recently released their earnings. This quick graph here just shows a breakdown of the credit card game. And by market share, as you can see, Visa has 39% globally, 71% locally. And so this is a very big achievement, and it proves that they're the dominant player as it relates to credit card processing and electronic payment processing. So let's check out a few things. And so, to start things off, let's go into their operational performance. They put this out. I'm actually going to use this document here. And let's take this as just a beginning to get an understanding of the volume of transactions that they produce. So, this is the total volume in a 3 month time period. So, this 3 month time period is from October to December 31st, 2025. We have a total amount here of $4.5 trillion in transactions processed. This number is trillions. And so 4.5 trillion with 1.9 trillion, almost 2 trillion coming from the United States. After that, the second biggest player is Europe with almost a trillion as well, but it's at 990. And then after that, the third culprit is Asia Pacific. One of the biggest countries here is Australia. So we're dealing with a lot of United States, Europe, Australia, really the big players in the usage of Visa. But you do have other big players that's growing. One of them is Latin America and the Caribbean. That's what this LAC stands for. Then you have Central Europe, basically Middle East and Africa, 383. So I would think that somebody's trying to grow in this market. It could be another competitor, but this is a very small amount to Visa. So maybe there's some potential to growth there. We shall see. Then you have Canada with 124 billion to make up this 4.5. So most of their transactions are being processed from US, Europe, and Asia Pacific, including Australia and Japan. So that's a scope on the volume of their transactions. Let's look at those earnings, and looking in the earnings, what we'll be able to get an understanding of is basically how much money they made from processing those $4.5 trillion in transactions. And so this 10.9 here, this is their revenue, net revenue. So a net revenue of 10.9 billion. So 10.9 billion was made in a 3 month time period. This 3 month time period, though, is from January to March of 2026. So 10.9 billion was brought in. And out of that 10.9 billion, 5 million was spent on expenses, leaving them with a gap net income of $5.9 billion. So this is Visa, the biggest payment processor in the land, and they have a net income of 5.9 billion. And so moving on to other items such as the balance sheet, we'll scroll down, and this is just more revenue. So we talked about that. And here goes the balance sheet. And I'm actually going to download it. And while that's downloading, I'll give you a clearer picture, but I'll still talk about it as it's processing. We still have a total asset line, which is down here of $97 billion. So $97 billion in assets, which is a pretty big number depending on who you're talking to. So let's look deeper into those 96 billion and what we would find. Scrolling down, it's finally downloaded. So scrolling down. Remember, we're dealing with an asset line of 96 billion that we want to find out more about. Make that a little bigger. Just so you can see this 96 billion is here. This is that 96, 97 billion at the total asset line. And is made up of, really, if we look at these items, we're just going to talk about the big ticket items in the asset line. The first thing is intangible assets, which is here. These are assets you're not able to touch. So this could be software patents. This could be actual software. And so certain non-hard assets. So a lot of intellectual property So when you're dealing with Visa, there probably is a lot of intellectual property in how apps are made and how payments are processed or whatever the case may be. So most of their assets come by way of this intangible asset, which is most likely intellectual property. And then they have another item here of 20 billion, which is goodwill. And goodwill is a very important thing when you're dealing with big corporations. It's basically when they overpay for an item because they perceive its market value is lower than its actual value. And so this is included as an asset on their balance sheet. And so when you look at their asset line, it's really intellectual property and goodwill. So we're dealing with almost 50 billion right there of this 96. And then after that, there's some cash at 15 billion. And really that's the only assets worth talking about. In regards to liabilities, they have 58 billion in liabilities, and the biggest liability of them all is long-term debt. So that could be mortgage, that could be a loan issued to pay for a certain computer or whatever the case may be. They're paying 20 billion in long-term debts. And then after that, the next item is client incentives. And so everybody knows that you use your card, you get certain points, cashback points. Well, that comes at a cost to Visa. And so they're actually enticing you or getting you or winning over your service by providing that incentive. And that's a liability that they have to pay that comes out of their pocket. So that is the 11.2 billion as it relates to client incentives. And so we spoke about roughly 30 billion of this 58 billion in liabilities, and that's enough to really get an understanding. Last is the equity, assets minus liability equal equity, and the equity is 39 billion. And so that is a quick summary of the Visa financial statements that just recently released. Let me know your questions and thoughts. Like, follow, subscribe, all of that good stuff. Until next time, deuces.